All right. Part two of F to S after popular demand, and I think it's been like 2 weeks since I've done this. So yeah, we're at E rank now, and some of the comments I got on YouTube. Let me check this out. Where people just saying like, oh, what we found out last time was that the skill level overall is really high, and I think a lot of people. So what I was attempting to do, like at the F ranks or whatever, was instead of trying to give you guys kind of like that esoteric game knowledge, the really like kind of abstract like understanding of the game that you get over playing, a lot, like that heuristical understanding. I try to like more so just push like the methodology of how you would get better. So even if you encounter like losses, you can maybe adjust and kind of understand how to go about it moving forward, how to fix mistakes and how to approach impasses, right? But I think I got a lot of the feedback that I got was that people kind of don't. I don't think people want me to play a too contrived like style that's basically totally off meta. I think people probably want me to play just a bit more standard, like not necessarily force the level down, but just kind of play more standard and slowly and just explain stuff. And I'm not sure how useful that is, but I'm also not sure how useful kind of my approach was last time. And I know I watched a lot of the Korean pros, their tutorials. And I do like how some of them approach teaching. And the problem that I have is that, there's one audience where I think going into in-depth, like I said, esoteric knowledge and like in-depth like meta knowledge of StarCraft isn't really useful for anyone who's new. And definitely when we're at this rank here, E rank and like F rank and D rank and C rank and B rank, well, B rank probably we're getting closer to playing the real game, but at the lower ranks it's not that useful to talk or like to really explain meta decisions. So for example, like I saw this really good video Soma put out that basically he was explaining all about in ZVT when to go for macro third hatch, like when to put your third hatch at a third base, and as opposed to when to put it in your base or like as a macro hatch. So when do you expand with the third hatch and when do you not expand with the third hatch? And that's a very, very relevant and specific topic to cover. And it's a really good topic to cover for Zerg players. But that is like also a totally worthless topic at the lower ranks. And I could do something similar for Terrans, where I can go really into like, again, like specifics of certain build orders and styles. But that's just totally lost at lower ranks. So I think for now I'll probably just play through the games and try and play like just slowly and methodically and try and explain my thought process as I go. And we'll just see how it goes, honestly. I mean, I really don't know how to approach this, but we'll try. Because last time I think the more I do this, the more I realize that the onus is a bit like I'm taking too much of the responsibility to try and teach people. I think the onus is a lot on you guys to use the information as you can and to internalize it yourself rather than me like kind of presenting it into like a contrived way to make sure that you kind of understand it. But we're playing here against Zerg, and I really truly think that at lower levels you should just do this build that I'm about to do. So you're gonna play mech, and it's really the best way to play Terran versus Zerg at lower levels. So it doesn't matter like where you send your SCVs really, you just want to make sure that you know, they're mining different mineral patches, and if you can split, that's good. If you can't, that's fine too. It's really not that important. A lot of people always ask like, why is there so much spamming? Like, what do the players do in the beginning when they like box their workers or whatever? And the reality is nothing. You know, this boxing thing is just kind of like an RTS idiosyncrasy that popped up, you know, over the years. But it's important to play, like, it's important to like warm yourself up, because you know, once you need the speed, you know, if you, it's just like a mental thing. I don't know. It's not very. I don't know what else to say about it. So we're gonna go here, 11 again, 9 depot, 11 racks, which is pretty much very standard. And then we're gonna go for a 12 gas. Wait, did I say 9 depot, 11 racks, 12 gas? And then 13 scout. So we'll go into bio play definitely later, like in the series, but I think early on, I really do think if you're new, you should definitely play a mech style, and I think you can scale this up like very well. And I'll try and just do the build orders properly. I won't sandbag as much as I did last time, because I don't know. We'll just try this. I'll just play like I would normally, but I'll try and play just much slower, and I'll try and explain exactly what I'm doing. So the drone's here, but there's nothing to harass. And our opponent opened with a hatchery first. Like, how do you know that it's a hatchery first? Well, just play a lot of games and you'll figure out the timings. Generally, if it's not a hatchery first, you would, the hatchery wouldn't be so far along. So you can go for a 17 factory here. 17 factory is very standard. Bring this SCV back. Third hatch from our opponent. So our opponent's playing 3 hatch. Meanwhile, we're playing with this factory at 17. And then just 1 marine for now, because I don't see any lings. These could be lings. You really want to just, with your scouting SCV, you just want to make sure that you scout exactly what is popping from these eggs. And notice how when I built my factory, I took all the SCVs off gas. So we're gonna do that until we expand, and then we will what's it called? We'll put them back on gas. Now, generally, you want to get a 20 command center, so it's okay to cut here. And because we kept our SCV alive, okay, I guess this is maybe not sandbagging enough, but keeping the SCV alive here is really important, because you keep the lings away from your base. But I'm already getting like a huge advantage, so I should probably just let it die. So I'll just let it die. And then after I start my 3rd depot, I put everything back on gas. And I'm just gonna keep making vultures off this factory. Start an armory. Okay, well, I feel like I'm okay. We'll have to, so we'll sandbag 1 vulture, okay? Because I feel bad, but honestly, I think I probably should have opened differently, because this style revolves around a lot around like good vulture micro. So the way I'm microing this is just using patrol. I just press patrol towards the lings and then click away with the vulture. So after 2-3 vultures, you can go for your add-on. The reason you want to get an add-on is because you're going to get what's it called? Goliath range. And because this is 3 hatch, we can actually go for 3 factories here. So usually you would want to get an eBay around 445 against 2 hatch Spire. But because it's 3 hatch, we're going to go for an eBay. Or for a 3rd hatchery, or for a 3rd factory, and I'm going to get plating. So plating into weapon always, because it's just, plating is just so efficient on Goliaths early on against the, against Mutalisks. I'm getting my 3rd factory. So basically, this 3rd factory would be an eBay if it were against 2 hatch. And then I'm gonna get an eBay now. 445 against 2 hatch and like 545 against 3 hatch is pretty much like okay. And then I can get range as well after my eBay starts. For now, we only need one gas. And you can kind of check, like, you know, there's some larva pop. Most people just kind of blindly go mutas because it's meta. And you can see, like, you know, our opponent's just saving larva, so it's most likely going to be mutas. But anyway, you can afford just getting turrets blindly. Even if it's not mutas, it doesn't really set you too far behind. So I would recommend 2 turrets at each command center when you're going mech, because you already have Goliaths and they're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So here are the mutas. Now I'm going to run these vultures away. I'm just going to go check for bases. We saw that our opponent went 3 hatch in base, or like 3 hatch, like with our first scouting SCV, so I know he doesn't have another base. From the start, but he could have maybe ninja'd a base. I mean, everything here is pretty standard. I don't think I'm gonna find another base, but these vultures, you want to just kind of keep them out on the map to prevent Zerg from taking a free expansion, and you don't want to lose them for free against the mutas when they spawn. So I'm going to come here, I have all my Goliaths, just defend this real quick. And when our plating finishes, we can go out on the map. Generally, when our plating finishes is when we go out on the map to try and pressure an expansion. But, you know, most likely our opponent does not have an expansion, so... And because I have a bunch of resources, I'm going to get an academy as well here. So I'm just going to go and attack my opponent at +1 plating, start +1 weapons, and our second timing is going to be when this weapon attack finishes. And we want to get up to 5 factory with 1 add-on for tanks and just, you know, bunch of Goliaths. But I'm going to come in here and just pressure my opponent. And I'm just going to kill him because, you know, this is E rank and this is all you really need to do at this rating. So you can also... A good way of fighting against Mutalisks is to kind of back up, like shoot, like kite basically. And the reason why kiting is good is because it, like, the mutas kind of lose range on the Goliaths for a bit, and they stop firing. So anyway, that's our first attack. You know, generally this attack shouldn't really kill Zerg, but it can definitely kill a random expansion. Now we're going to come back and just mass for our second attack around when this finishes. So I'm going to start getting siege tanks as well. Siege is important because you can basically kill sunks with it. That's really the biggest thing, is you want to be able to kill sunks with your siege. And obviously, like, sometimes you'll have a lot of minerals and there's not much you can do about it, because with this build, we're not really trying to make vultures or whatever, or take another expansion. So generally, like, something like this is indicative of the fact that I probably took my natural expansion gas too slowly. So next game, I would try and take it faster. Okay, if that makes sense. And, you know, as you get more comfortable, you really want to make sure, you really want to, like, if you can, I mean, at this level, you know, at this level, it's a bit difficult to do this, but hotkeying all your factories really helps. The other part of spending minerals in this situation is when you're playing mech, when you're doing this 1-1 push, is one of the biggest issues you might have is mass muta, like, counterattack as you push out. So if you have any extra minerals, you can just spend it all on just like turrets everywhere, because really you're just gonna all in the Zerg. And if one of the ways you can lose is if they just counterattack with like 10 control groups, or like 2 control groups of mutas, and basically we have the resources to spare anyway. So you see, now my generally 1-1 finishes around 10:30. Now 10:50 we're a bit late this game, but you should always have around 3 tanks and, you know, 2 control groups and a bit of Goliath. So we're just gonna hotkey them all and attack. And I'm just gonna come here and just siege my tanks and kill the Zerg, you see. And really, like, what the Zerg is supposed to do in this situation is they're basically supposed to just macro really well to have enough stuff to hold you off. So it really is, this is like a macro test for the Zerg player. Behind this, you can, like, build another command center. It doesn't really matter. Generally, like, you're pretty all in with this attack. But if you manage to do damage, you can follow up with, like, a command center or something. And this factory with the add-ons always making tanks, and everything else is making Goliaths. And you want to just kind of, like, rally it at your natural, because you don't want to send your units out without bunching them or gathering a couple of them first. Otherwise, it's really easy for Zerg to pick them off, right? Like, pick off reinforcements and stuff. So here, next rally, I'm just gonna bring all of my units together, and I'm just taking my time. Like, notice I don't want to attack into sunks, and I'm really forcing the Zerg to engage here. So there's no rush for me. You can use hold positions really good in this situation, because your units kind of just chill there, and just keep them all bunched up together. And this is why it's important to bring, like, a bunch of units at a time. I'm just gonna push this up again, siege these guys, and that's it. Our opponent's dead. You know, we just had too much for them. Lol. So that's really, like, how you should be playing TVZ. Now I kind of griefed a bit, and I played a bit too. I mean, this was a bit difficult for sure for a new player. I think if you're not comfortable with vultures early on, you can definitely just continuously make marines off this barracks and put a bunker down before you expand. And you know what? I'll do that next game. And then the scouting, really the biggest thing is just establishing whether it's 2-hatch or 3-hatch, and that's like a skill that's going to scale up really into higher level play, so it's probably good to get used to it. But mostly what we're looking for here is just whether or not our opponent went for hatch first, and whether it's 2-hatch or not. And how do you know if it's 2-hatch? Generally 2-hatch, the lair starts around like 255 or between 255 and 305. So sometimes like our opponent here actually got this hatchery before, or got the gas before the hatchery. So I think if you're inexperienced, you might not be able to tell that this is a 2 hatchery build. But generally, like this 3rd hatch, the Zerg can't afford it if they go lair. So they can't afford to get a 3rd hatch before they start their lair. So that's another tell. So there's 2 ways of knowing. Like, one is 2 hatch timing 255 for lair, 255 or 305. And then the other thing you can think about is, does my opponent have a 3rd hatch started before the lair or not? So if the 3rd hatch starts before the lair, that's generally a 3 hatch build. And if the 3rd hatch starts after the lair, or you don't see a 3rd hatch by the time the lair starts, that's a 2 hatch build. Though that can be a bit ambiguous because sometimes Zergs will hide this 3rd hatch. So let's say if our opponent hid this 3rd hatch here, then you would only have the information of this hatchery pull gas, which looks like a 2 hatch if you don't know the lair timing for 2 hatch. So that's why it's important to know that the lair generally starts between 255 and 305 on a 2 hatch. So that's really what you want to know. And what that changes is basically your eBay timing. Versus 2 hatch, you want to go 2 factories, eBay, and your eBay should start around 445. And then against 3 hatch, you want to go 3 factories and then eBay, and your eBay should start around 545. Okay, so there you go. I hope that helps. It's a lot of fucking points, so we're not even going to spend a lot of fucking time in here. On to the next game. If you lower your rank, you can't count on your opponent making any... I don't give a shit, dude. I don't really care. I'm not going to sit here and give you guys contrived decision-making tools for, like, encountering bad opponents. Like, against bad opponents, you should be able to just make a bunch of units and win anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think that's one pitfall that you can kind of... Sorry, the reason... Okay, that... dude, I'm actually starting to troll. Maybe I'm a bit too loose right now. Because I F5 there. I think one of the pitfalls of teaching this game is that there's always, like, new players that either say, like... oh, but I can't do this. Or... Oh, but at this level, people... You know, people play like idiots, so... And I think, like, pandering to that type of rhetoric, like, you just can't really do that. Like, the onus is on you to kind of figure your stuff out at that level. Like, I can't just go down and give you, like, a case-by-case for, like, your potato games, you see? So, the most I can tell you is, like, the theory, and then you try and get better at it. And generally, if your opponent is just potatoing and doesn't have good timings, you have an advantage anyway. So if you just focus on your build and hitting your own timings, you'll have an advantage. So anyway, we have a Zerg here. And this time I'm going to do that bunker variation. No, I know you... Plagar Z, it's okay, man. It's a fair question. And the reason I had, like, a hostile reaction, let's say, is because I was catching myself from trying to basically indulge that type of idea. So we're gonna go again, like 9 depot, 11 Rex, 12 gas, okay, and then 13 scout. The one problem when you go factory expand in this matchup is you can't really double scout, so it can be a bit weak against something like 9 pool. So keep that in mind. Generally you double scout to verify for pool first if you're doing like a 1 Rex expand, but if you double scout with a gas expand, it really strains your economy because you see, like, you know, I already have 3 SCVs off the minerals, and you know, if we have an extra SCV kind of scouting around, our mineral income is going to be gutted. But generally, you really want to focus on trying to get this early factory. So 16 is good, 17 is good. If you get on 16, you're cutting this this SCV, and I kind of recommend it if you're gonna play like this. And I would just keep making Marines. So keep making Marines until you get 4. So we're gonna do kind of like a slower but a bit more robust opening, so that you don't have to rely on crazy good Vulture Micro to hold off all-ins. I'm gonna bring this SCV. I'm gonna build a depot on the low ground. And because I'm making so many Marines, I'm gonna go 3 depot before expansion. And you'll see, even though I have like this slower build, we'll still be fine. And remember, I got this factory and I took off gas, okay? So just remember that every time. And you want to put back on gas after you start your command center. So I have these 4 Marines now. I'm gonna come in down here, put my bunker down. These Marines, if you don't really have scouting intel like I don't right now, keeping them by your ramp is the safest place to have them. But okay, we're in our opponent's base. We see this is an expansion, so we can feel pretty good. That's a lot of drones. We saw a sunk as well. So just very very economical opening, or at least passive opening from our opponent. So I made 1 Vulture, just 1 Vulture, and I'm gonna get my expansion put back on gas as well. Now I'm gonna make a 2nd Vulture. So our opponent has a Spire already, and we only scouted 2 hatch. And again, here, like, I know it's 2 hatch because of the timing, because I play this game too much. You might not know, but because the Spire is so fast relative to our build, which again is like a kind of esoteric knowledge, I know it's 2 hatch. So we're only gonna get 2 factories, okay? Get that depot first. So these Vultures can kind of just stay outside the opponent's base. Okay, I can't get this depot. I have to get an eBay. So remember, 445 eBay. A bit, you know, it's okay if it's slightly late. And after these 3 Vultures, I'm getting an add-on. Now, this is why it's kind of scary to do a more potato build. This bunker and 4 Marines really delayed our timing. So, and you know, our opponent clearly has like a good build order. So, you know, if you can get away with not making this bunker, that's ideal, obviously. But I'll show you guys that you can get away with not making the bunker. So, in my opinion, you should always start with plating. But I won't get, no, okay, I'm not gonna get it this time because I want to be able to make SCVs and turrets. The range upgrade is slightly more important at dealing with Mutalisks. So remember, I get two turrets per command center. But I can also get one at my factory, just to be safe. So 2 turrets per command center and then 1 at the factory. And now that we have, you know, it's okay if these Vultures die. You know, we're at E rank, it's not that important. Or D rank, I don't know, E rank, where are we at? So I have my turrets now. I have Goliath range going and SCVs making. So I'm gonna start plating now. Okay, that's basically what my decision making was. And obviously I'm gonna get supply blocked like a potato, but it's okay if you get supply blocked because you can just put down 2 depots and you'll be fine. Okay, now we have a nice defensive situation here. Opponent's gonna have a hard time harassing, and as the money piles in, we're gonna get a 3rd factory here. I'm gonna start this 3rd factory, and then once I start SCV production again, I'm gonna get my 2nd gas as soon as I can afford it. Although I probably should have went. See, this is the type of stuff you can adjust from game to game. Like, should I have went 3rd factory first or my 2nd gas? This time I went 3rd factory first. And you know, over the course of like 10 games, I'll try both things, right? Like I'll try and get third factory first, and then I'll try getting the second gas, and the more I play, the more I can figure it out. So that's, you don't have to have the answers to everything. So remember, when +1 plating finishes, we're gonna push out and pressure. It could be nice, like the only problem with losing the vultures is that it's hard for me to see where my opponent's expansion is. So I don't know where to pressure with these Goliaths, except for attacking the natural. But sometimes it's kind of bad to attack the natural because they usually will have a sunk there, and sunks are really good at dealing with Goliaths. But that's fine. You can still attack you can still kind of push out to the natural and then bring your units back. So we're gonna move out now that we warded off the Mutalisks and our +1 is almost done. This SCV is gonna kind of scout for other bases. You really don't want to ever stop making SCVs. You don't want to stop making SCVs. So no expansion at bottom right. I'm gonna move here to try and see if there's an expansion there. And you'll get free stuff like these overlords from time to time. So there's an expansion here. I'm just gonna kill it with these Goliaths. And behind this, I'm gonna go up to 5 factory again, because see, my +1 plating finished. So I'm gonna go up to 5 factories. Even if these Goliaths die, it's okay, because they're pressuring a lot. They're forcing a lot of units from the Zerg that aren't drones. So you just want to micro like this, if you can. If you can't, that's fine. Just make sure they're all shooting. And of course, like the thing that I'm like hacking, man, because I'm making units while microing, and that's why it's important to have all your factories hotkeeyed. But if you can't do that yet, that's fine. That's just an area that you can improve in. And then as you get into this 5 factory configuration, and look, I'll just let these Goliaths die, so that you guys can see that they've done their job. Even if they die, you don't have to save them. Although they're fucking absolute big dick, man. They're huge dick. And remember, this is when you also want to start making tanks. I'm also getting an academy, because I can afford it. And I'm going to spam turrets now as well, because there's no reason not to spend my excess minerals. Sometimes you might not have as many minerals as I do. Depends on how good your SCV production is. Now, I know I recognize right now that a lot of you guys at this rating are not going to have this macro. Okay, like I don't miss these production cycles even when I'm sandbagging, because it's just so ingrained in my muscle memory. But it's okay if you lose some. Okay, like for example, if I do this build optimally, I can hit at 10:30 with 1-1 already. 10:30, like literally 30 seconds ago, I would have 3 tanks and way more Goliaths than what I have here. So think about that. Think about that. And this is going to be more than enough to win the game. So you want to start getting siege, like this is the last thing you want to upgrade, because it's fairly expensive. And notice how I still have a lot of excess minerals. Make sure you're mining when the refinery is on the bottom like this. You want to mine with 4 SCVs, because it's slightly inefficient mining with 3 SCVs. And sometimes when you have a turret like this, you might want to put 5 SCVs. But that's fine if you have like, you'll have oversaturation anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. So we're gonna go now, because it's time. The timing 1-1. We're gonna go now. And again, you can build a command center behind this. Just build a command center if you can afford it. Just build it in your base. It doesn't really matter. And your rally should be at your natural. You don't want to rally your factories across the map, because again, it's easy to intercept units. Now just make sure you're attacking. Now I'm doing a pretty bad job to keep my... You want to keep your army together. So really, if I'm being really like trying really hard, I would take my time before engaging there. But you know, that's just part of the execution that you can improve on as you play the game more. We're just gonna attack, siege these tanks if you can. You can also, whatever, you know. As you get better at Terran, you'll notice that, and if you watch good Terran players play, they don't really rely always on hotkeys, like clean hotkeys like this, and they'll individually siege tanks. Because you have a lot more control over, like, with the siege and stuff. So now I'm at the front of their base. So I'm just going to bring my units. And as long as my tanks are hitting sunks, it's fine. So take the time here. There's literally no pressure. If you do this build, you can't lose. You can't lose. So no more sunks, now we're gonna go in. The sunks are really strong against Goliaths, which is why you want to have tanks like attacking it. Go in, now our opponent's attacking, just keep your units together, siege your tanks. And you know, our opponent has a lot of Hydras, and actually has 1/1 Hydras as well. That's pretty impressive. Of course our attack was literally 4 minutes late. Like 3 minutes and a half late. But our opponent still struggled with it, right? So, just saying, that's how late our attack was. You should be at their natural as you finish 1/1, basically. Or like in the middle of the map as you finish 1/1. And 1/1 should finish around 10:30, possibly even earlier. So, knowing that in mind, with that in mind, you can constantly try and improve your build to hit those timings. But see, this game, my 1/1 finished at like 11 and something, and my entire army was in my base. So definitely super inefficient, right? Super inefficient. And this attack, like I said, this attack, the most optimal place it can go is to the Zerg's third base, because generally, like, Zerg from the opening will have a sunken at least that they're not, since you open with a vulture. And, you know, a sunk in conjunction with Mutalisks easily defends, like, this first group of Goliaths. So going to the third base kind of forces more sunks. And sometimes if they don't have sunks or they forget, you can just kill it for free. It's just the best thing to pressure. But you have to know where it is. So the one problem that we had this game was we didn't know where our opponent's third base was. And a lot of that can be dealt with by using your vultures better. So, you know, those 3 vultures we made early on, they kind of just died to the Mutalisks. But if we were better at keeping them alive, they could have gathered more information. So that's something to keep in mind as you improve. There's always these small things that you can do better. And a bit of the theory here. The idea of this push is that you hit this +1 timing. Now this was a bit early, you know, it's not, again, this is also not very clean because technically we're not using our power spike. So if our opponent fought right here, we wouldn't have had the plating, but when we did fight, we did have the plating. And +1 armor is basically just way more efficient at this stage of the game against Mutalisks than +1 weapons is. Okay? For a variety of reasons, but it just is. Because it cuts down basically like the bounce damage, which is massive. And the plus damage you get against Mutalisks isn't very good. And generally, yeah, I mean, anyway, it just, +1's better. +1 armor is just way better early on. And the theory is to hit this timing, and this timing really like forces the Zerg to not over drone. So it forces them to make sunks, it forces them to make Mutalisks. And it forces them to, you're just kind of controlling their economy. So in theory, it's fine to lose these units because they're there to just slow the Zerg down. But obviously, like if Zerg plays perfectly and deals with this efficiently, then they're going to be ahead. So it really depends on the game-to-game basis, on an execution basis. But you shouldn't be too scared of losing these units. Like you really want to see this build as a two-phase, like a two-parter. First part is this +1 attack with the plating, with the Goliaths. And then second part is the second phase is the +1 weapons, +1 armor attack with 5 factories and 2-3 tanks and a bunch of Goliaths. And if you can save these Goliaths, it'll just make your push at 1030 or whatever your push at 1-1 much stronger. But at the same time, and you can also just choose to not pressure with these Goliaths. You can kind of just keep them in your base and just wait for 1-1. And maybe next game we could do that. I'll show you guys maybe an example of a game like that. But the only problem with that is that you're really giving Zerg a lot of breathing space. At lower ranks, it doesn't really matter because Zergs aren't tight enough to really abuse that economically. But as you get higher skilled, you really have to be good at pressuring Zergs. And this is true for both Protoss and Terran. Wolfix also says armor's also better versus Hydras. Yeah, that's also a good point. But yeah, definitely armor is just way more efficient. The other thing is I'm also not really missing too many SCVs, and that's like a huge. So I guess I could explain this. I'll take this moment to explain it a bit because I think it's important. I'm not sure how good of a job I'm gonna do at explaining this, but it's an important concept that I think a lot of players need to understand in general with respect to the economy of this game. So I'm just gonna make a silly graph here. What color should I make it though? Like, I'm just gonna make it like a really funky color. What the fuck? Orange is kind of cracked. So let me think about this. So StarCraft, the reason why as you get higher level, StarCraft follows a certain logic. Like StarCraft games follows a certain they become tighter, as it were. They follow a certain progression. It follows a certain progression, the games do. And it tends to not deviate too much. So, you always have these questions from newer players where they're like, well, why not get carriers at this point? Like, what if Protoss has carriers at this point? Or what if my opponent has X? What if my opponent has Y? And it's always generally these like these kind of like exaggerated statements, and generally experienced players. So I remember like Day 9 used to explain this concept as being, well, if they have too much of this or too much of that, or if they have kind of a combination of too many things, then you just kill them. Like, what if they have carriers and arbiters, or what if they have dragoons? Like, what if they have like Stargate and 5 bases or something, or what if I don't know, something like that. I think a lot of players that don't have the strict kind of understanding of the game progression generally ask these what if questions. And the reason why, for example, suboptimal play doesn't work in StarCraft is because as you get better at it, the game becomes tighter. And the economy works in this way. Like, basically, as you start the game out, you know, you have your 5 workers, right? Or your 4 workers that you start with. The fuck? Okay. So you have like 4 workers. And over time, like, basically, I mean, there's multiple ways of seeing this, right? You could objectively look at it like, I don't know how the progression would look like on a graph, but obviously, you know, as you increase your command center count, your workers are going to start like exponentially increasing. But generally, you should just think of it as like a straight line, and this is like your worker count, but it's also your total income. And obviously it can be affected by, for example, like, you know, either... Dude, this is so troll. So obviously it can be affected by like an extra command center or an additional base, more minerals. And again, here, and like, you know, you would think that, you know, once you take another base, you know, you're going to get even higher, I don't know, like something crazy. I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. Because the... Dude, guys, this is the worst explanation ever. But the point is, if you miss workers, you're going to fall off the natural progression of the game. Okay? And once you fall off the natural progression of the game, then the game no longer, the meta or the game is no longer makes sense. And generally at lower levels, this is exactly what happens. This is why, for example, at very low levels, you know, there's huge imbalances in the matchups because you're falling off this kind of natural progression. So the more you make, the better you get at continuously making workers, the tighter your build becomes, and the more you follow kind of the natural line, the natural progression of the game. And this is one of the most crucial fundamental parts to learn. And it's not just worker count, because this also translates, this line, you know, your workers and your income, also translates in you getting your certain timings right. So for example, in the TVZ builder we just talked about, you know, you could have here, let's say this is like +1 armor timing. You should have like right here, you should have like 3, let's say like 2, like you should have like 3 facts and like X Goliaths, right? And then at this point, when you have 1, you should have like 5 facts and like whatever. Units. But if you're missing these workers, then once you get to these stages, you just don't have that. And then if your opponent is on their line, let's say their natural progression or on their curve, then suddenly they will. And they'll just have more stuff than you. And then that's when the game really kind of becomes, in a sense, even imbalanced. Like you shouldn't even be kind of evaluating your games at that point, you know. So the biggest thing, you know, when you're looking at your replays, for example, is, am I missing my build? Like, am I hitting my worker count? Am I missing build? Or am I hitting my worker count? Am I hitting my builds? And, you know, even this natural progression, like that, I think probably a lot of people might also be objecting to this progression if they think about, for example, Zerg. Because you might think, oh, well, what if Zerg just makes a lot of fucking drones or something? Then, you know, their progression is different, and like, isn't that inherently imbalanced or something? But no, like basically in every matchup, every single race follows a line, so to speak. And if both players are playing optimally, those lines will keep each other in check. So, for example, in that earlier in that earlier game that we just played, that first +1 armor attack with the Goliaths is there to make sure that the Zerg stays on their line and they don't start like shooting up, right? But anyway, those are like even more esoteric concepts. But this idea of like just kind of this line, this idea of like a progression, a game progression that's tied to your worker count, your execution, your build order is really, really important to know. It's really important to think about. All right, I'm gonna open chat up on the thing. I don't know. Does any of this make sense, guys? Do you have any questions? I know this is the worst explanation I've ever done, but I just told myself like, whatever. You know, this is obviously unscripted, and later down the line, you know, a couple months from now, if I redo the series, I'll have a better explanation than I do now. But in my astrophysics class, anyway, I think if you play the game, you'll kind of understand what I'm saying. You guys are trolling. Anyway. As a genuine F player, can you help me understand why I've been in queue for 130,000 seconds? You know, probably because you're bugged, man. No, I wasn't looking at the chat. John conveys SCV count increases minerals, which has the biggest scaling effect on the game. In a sense, yes. Yes, it has this, yes. Yes and no. We'll come back to this. This is actually a baguette. Can you explain the line from a Protoss versus Terran perspective? No, fuck. Okay, you guys are trolling me, man. This is a disaster, dude. Oh my god, this is what happens when I try to make any kind of serious content, man. Just 4 workers is blue line. Whatever. So it's important to just, long story short, guys, is just fucking don't miss your worker production, okay? Alright, we're just gonna get into another game. Most of you guys don't even fucking play StarCraft, I'm sure, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, let's go, let's go. I'll stop doing this. Another Zerg, guys, another Zerg. We can continue with the... I think maybe once I get into B rank, I'll do, like, real builds. Well, I mean, this mech build's really... I mean, it's real, too. But some are less real than others. So yes, like worker count has like the most scaling effect in the game, but to a point. But to a point, right? So like, and there's other factors to think about. So objectively speaking, like theoretically speaking, rather, you know, it's not, because I think if you would make that statement as like, oh yeah, workers have the biggest effect of scaling, then you should always be making workers like non-stop, and that's like a win condition, which, you know, it's not really, right? It's not really. I would say overall, like, what I don't know, man. I don't understand how, I'm not quite sure how to verbalize the like metaphysics of this game. The metaphysics of the metagame. So again, 9 racks, or 9 depot, 11 gas, or 9 depot, 11 racks, and then 12 gas, 13 scout. Maybe you guys understand now why I'm garbage at this game. I'm just clearly a brainlet dude. Maybe Artosis was right. I'm just a macro bot. I don't understand anything. So last game we built that bunker, and I showed you guys you can win with that, but it's not ideal. But we'll do it. We'll do it anyway. I mean, I don't think it's possible to lose at this rating until like a really long time. And not only will we do that again, but I will also just not attack with the first Goliath move out, and I'll show you guys you can just play for the 1-1 and win. For the 1-1 timing, as long as you have good macro. Okay? And we can take a look at the effects of that. I really appreciate the advice, but things like 9 deep 11 barracks doesn't work in low ranks when Zerg sends 8 lings. Alright, that's actually the most brainlet thing I've ever heard. Just get better at the game. If you can't do 9 deep 11 racks, you're you're just bad, dude. Like there's no solution to that than getting better. So just get better, dude. I don't know what to say. Fucking psycho, man. It's like to a point, you know? It's like saying like, oh well, I don't know guys, I can't send my SCVs to mine consistently. So is there like a solution to that? Like no. Not really. So I said 3rd depot, but this time I'm gonna not do 3 depot, I'll do 2 depot, command center, send it back on gas. Our opponent's 3 hatch. You can see this 3rd hatch is almost done. So armory, or sorry, depot and then armory. All right, this is also, by the way, this is why you make a 3rd depot. Oh shit, man. This is why you make a 3rd depot, because you don't get supply blocked like an idiot. And you can continuously make SCV count. Remember, worker, never miss workers. So what did I say? Yeah, we're not going to attack. Also, this game, I won't make I'll make this 1 vulture. You should always make at least 1 vulture, but you can vary the amount of vultures you make. So you see how every single game I'm doing something slightly different? It should just reflect the fact that you can play StarCraft in very different ways, as long as you like make the adjustments to, you know, they all have different repercussions on the game. Now at low rating it doesn't really matter because the game is not tight enough, but as you get better it does definitely change the dynamic. So for example, when I have fewer vultures, I definitely am a bit more open to getting all in. But at the same time, I'm gonna start Goliath production that much earlier. So I'm gonna have more Goliaths when +1 finishes, and I'll have better defense against what's it called? Against Mulisks. So again, remember when I said 3 hatch, 3 factories? We're gonna make an eBay now. Basically, as long as you start your eBay before 6 minutes or before 5 minutes, you're fine. Range. Always making SCVs, you see? Now you should, if you're uncomfortable, I make my SCVs with F keys, but you can also just hotkey your command centers. And this time I'm not going to attack. So when this eBay finishes, I'm going to make a turret here because I want detection versus lurkers. Okay, pull all your SCVs. make sure you're making Goliaths. I mean, this is hard to stop, for sure. Make sure you're making Goliaths, and then we're making SCVs as well. So I'm just making Goliaths and SCVs, keeping them like this in an arc. Don't get supply blocked. See how slow, like we just had no idea that was coming, but we can definitely defend this and still win. Okay? As long as we stay on the line, guys, stay on the line. You gotta stay on the line. Now we're gonna make this because we can afford it. Second gas, basically just make it as soon as you can afford it after you have 3 factories. And just keep making Goliaths, start +1. When you start +1 weapons, you could start your academy as well. Academy is important because you want to get scanners for your push. In case they have lurkers. And we're just making depots, trying not to get supply blocked. We want to get up to 5 factories as well. I'm still gonna make a couple turrets here because I can afford it, and you know, your opponent can also kind of retroactively go into mutas. So notice how I'm making workers over over units. Now make 5 factories, start tank production. See, I'm playing with absolutely no scouting information. I just don't even care what's happening. I'm just following my build, following my line, guys. Anyone else following their lines? Just keep making units. Don't miss your production cycles as best as you can. Don't get supply blocked. And basically, like, what I'm doing on my keyboard is this. Over and over. Which is how I macro. See? I have these scanners hotkeyed as well. And again, we're waiting for +1 weapons. Try and get this Overlord. Now we can start siege because we're getting close to pushing. Kill that bitch. Now hotkey everything. And we move out. We can make a command center, like I said, behind this. And we move out. And just keep your units together. I'm gonna scan ahead. And I'm still making units. Still making units. Now you guys might have to go back and look at your factories, but that's why, again, that's why it's a good skill to like be able to hotkey all your production buildings. And remember, like, we basically have 3 tanks with this push almost every time. And again, I'm just gonna come here, just siege my tanks up in range of the sunks. I mean, in the sunks in range of my tanks, but my tanks outside the range of the sunks. And just force the Zerg to come to you. There's no reason to panic here. Just force the Zerg to come to you. I'm gonna scan ahead, making Mutalisks. But you see, my opponent doesn't have upgrades, so they're gonna get absolutely fucked. And look at this, look at those drones. And come here and just siege up in range of this. I mean, no sunks, we just attack. And no micro, like no hands, no micro, nothing. So that's why mech is strong TVZ, you see, at this level. Yeah, can I do that with my feet? And like that, we're in D rank. Just like that, guys. We're in D rank. Alright. This is a good time to open chat up. See if there's any questions. Yeah, we're... Eskia, you D rank, bro? Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? You know what, guys? The reality is I've cultivated a bit of an autistic chat, so I guess I deserve not getting any questions, man. I basically make your CB range ranks the biggest portion of videos. Oh, see ya. Shouldn't we compartmentalize individual skill? Okay. Shouldn't we compartmentalize individual skills like non-stop SE, making supply depots, F keys, macro? It's a sum of these total actions. Yeah, 100%, man. You're fucking genius. And that's why, for me, it's so easy to get up the ranks, is because I do all of these well. Now, from an educational perspective, I mean, I could compartmentalize those things. Like, and how would you want me to, like, it's very difficult to teach those things like individually, right? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, one game I'm just gonna make SCVs really well, and then the other game I'm gonna make this other thing really well. Like, no, it's I think I don't know, it's just difficult to I mean, I obviously am doing a lot of things well. And I think what I'm struggling to deal with is, I think generally a lot of lower skilled players compartmentalize these skills like too much as a means to kind of explain away why they're bad, or like to cope, really, for lack of a better word. And generally, like, it comes down to this psychology where it's kind of a defeatist attitude, like, oh well, I can't do this as well, so I shouldn't play like this. But I just don't understand. I feel like that psychology is just kind of pointless. And you have benchmarks of 40 SCVs at 7 minutes, 60 SCVs at 10 minutes, and 1 depot per base constantly. Well, there you go. That's great. I can tell you guys that I I don't have those types of algorithms for myself. I've never learned like that. I play very like based off of feeling. So I just play a lot and adjust it myself. Now, if you're the type of learner that needs to have these benchmarks, that's fine. I do have some benchmarks in other matchups. In this matchup, I told you guys, you want to hit one, like with this build, you want to hit 1/1 +1 weapons +1 plating at 1030, and you want to have 5 factories and 3 tanks at 1030, and just have as much stuff as possible. Now, there are things that I will do adjustments to from game to game to try and get more optimization out. Like I mentioned in an earlier game, is it better to go second gas before or after my third factory? And then the more so than just that, I will have times where, probably not in this matchup, but in other matchups, I will try and make more vultures to free up more resources to get more buildings, you see? So I have some hard benchmarks, but it's also kind of a feeling-based thing, I feel like. If the Zerg opens mass Hydra rather than Muta, do you start making tanks with the... No, I mean, you saw this game. This guy opened he opened Hydras, and I didn't veer off my game plan. I did the same thing I would do in any situation. That's the beauty of this build. You do literally the same thing no matter what your opponent does. Goliaths are really efficient early on in this matchup. Like, they're more efficient than tanks. Tanks are way too expensive, and they're not even that strong in low numbers. Actually, Goliaths do better against Hydras. Goliaths do better against holding this type of all-in than tanks do, because tanks, you have to get tanks and then you have to get siege mode, but if you have just one tank with siege, it's not good enough. If you have 2 tanks with siege, it's not good enough, and they're way more expensive than Goliaths. So, no, I mean, you don't adjust anything. That's why I think I'm teaching you guys this build order, because it's just the most brain-dead thing you could play. How do I hotkey sections of the map like factories? So, oh, like camera hotkeys? So, like, see, these are things you should know. I'm not, you know. So F2, F3, F4 are your camera hotkeys, and then Shift F2, F3 sets them. So you can actually do this in replays. So look, F2 right now is on this command center, so when I hit F2, it goes here. But this is very basic knowledge, man. Like, pretty much everyone knows this. No, they do know, man. E-Rank definitely knows. I think certain benchmarks are important on S-Rank, though. I just told you, I have some benchmarks, but I don't... Like, it just depends on the type of person you are, man. Like, you know, there's people that learn by highlighting and putting, like, post-it notes on their fucking books and having a color code and stuff like that, and that's fine. You know, if you want to color code your build order in StarCraft, that's fine, but Big Jip has never been like that. You know how I learn? I read a book, I write in the fucking, on the margins, I cross the shit out of stuff, and it's disgusting. And I don't have, you know, I don't have an agenda, guys. I don't have a schedule. I play StarCraft the same way. I don't have these benchmarks. I just make units. All in the mind. Do I keep 5 factories hotkeyed through the whole game? No, as you get later into the game, definitely not. But those are things you adjust for yourself. I mean, it's kind of like if you play tennis or something, and then you ask someone else, like, "Oh, how do you hold your racket at for all of your strokes?" I mean, everyone's different. Like, you know, you have a slightly different grip or something. Like, I have a slightly different way I use my keyboard. Like, that's not something you should worry too much Though I think in general, and this is kind of proven by the fact that a lot of pros uh, all converged on this. You want to hotkey your production buildings, and you want to make workers with F keys. Like that's the most efficient way of playing. You know, once upon a time, people didn't play like that. Probably they hotkeyed their like I used to for a long time. I used to hotkey just my command centers. I had every single command center hotkeyed. I had only one production building hotkeyed, so I could double tap it, go back, and make units off of it. And then my F keys were kind of whatever. Like in the early game, I had F keys on my command centers because I wanted to send workers between bases. And then later in the game, I had F keys on my production buildings and my rally points. But as I played more, I used them differently. And now, I mean, for example, my F keys are always on my command center, so it's a bit redundant to also have my command centers hotkeyed. For example. Is that like the art form where you get so good it's unconscious? I mean, I don't know. Maybe some of you guys haven't. Yeah, I mean, as you get better, you just get better at it. I don't know what else to say. You know, like maybe a lot of you guys can't do this over and over, but I can. That's how I make Marines, for example. So, but if you play enough, you will be able to do it too. So, hotkey layout is important, but it's not the most important thing. Like, I don't know how to explain this, but really, like, guys, you just have to play. You can get, look, I'll play a game here. I'll play the next game with totally different hotkeys. I'll literally hotkey my command centers. I won't use F keys. I'll just scroll around like an idiot. And I'll still win. It doesn't matter. I'll still absolutely destroy whoever I'm playing. So another random player. Because I think, like, a lot of people, I'll keep saying this. A lot of new players, they try to just make shit up to, like, to cope, really. Like, oh no, it's my hotkey layout that's bad. Oh no, it's my mouse that's bad. It's my keyboard that's bad. Oh, it's the matchup that's bad. Oh, it's the latency that's bad. And the reality is, it's just, no, you're just bad. Like, you're just at a level, and that's fine, you know? It's as simple as, like, you know, if I go to the gym and I can't squat 3 plates, it doesn't matter what I do. You know, I can change my shoes, I can wear a belt, I can change my lifting form to completely fuck it up or something, but if I'm squatting 2 plates and I've never squatted 3 plates, I'm not gonna magically squat fucking 3 plates. Same thing with StarCraft. Like, just, you know, you're fucking, if you're D rank, you're D rank. That's what it is. That's it. You know, you're not gonna change your mouse and become fucking C rank. You know, like, it's just gonna take time. But people literally just internalize the most insane discourses to, like, rationalize why they fucking lose, and it's fine. You know, you always do it. You know, even at whatever. But the bottom line is, just don't think about it too much. Now we're playing against random on a 2-player map, so I'm just gonna scout. I forgot I'm using a completely different. I'm just gonna use a completely random hotkey layout. I'm gonna have my command centers hotkeyed. I'm gonna scout after my racks. I'm gonna get a gas. And on 2-player maps against random, I mean, it's really easy because I can just scout right now, and if I see Zerg, well, actually, we've just been doing the the mech build in TVZ, so you can just go gas every single time and just do the mech build in TVZ. But if you don't do mech in TVZ, you can just... I got this gas a bit too early. I could have canceled it. So our opponent is Zerg. Our opponent is Zerg, went hatch first. So we're just gonna do the same build again. Same build again. This time I'm gonna try and actually defend with my vultures. Here, this game I won't hotkey my factories, so you guys see that you can win even without hotkeying your factories, okay? I mean, I'll try not to. I mean, it is kind of subconscious sometimes, but... So, I'm not making a Marine because it's not going to do anything. The Zerg player hasn't scouted me with a drone. And I'm going to have a factory to make vultures to defend with. Okay? And I'm not even going to use F keys. I'm literally just going to hotkey my command centers. I'm just gonna hotkey my command centers. Well, honestly, I mean, it is kind of annoying. I would like to hotkey at least one factory, but it's okay. I won't. For the sake of this argument, I am cheating a bit, keeping this SCV alive, right? Whatever, I don't care. Sunks up. Gonna make one vulture add-on. I'm already handicapping myself enough by like just not even hotkeying stuff. Just using minimal amount of hotkeys. And also remember, you always go second, you go armory then second factory, okay? And this was 2 hatch, so again, this time around we're gonna make, well, I'm gonna have to be careful now because I have to actually defend with this vulture. We're gonna make 2 factories only, okay? So now I only have the 2 command centers hotkeyed, which, by the way, I do suggest you guys play like this when you first start playing, okay? So 4:45. For whatever, just before 5 minutes we're making the eBay, okay? I'm making non-stop dudes. Well, because our opponent went for Hydras here, I'm not gonna get... See, this is like one kind of adjustment. What's the point in getting Goliath range? It's to deal versus Mutalisks. My opponent's not going Mutalisks, so I'm gonna delay my Goliath range to get my 3rd factory faster. Okay? And that's how basically S-rank players play better than non-S-rank players. And now we see speed as well on Overlords. So in my mind I'm like, wow, this is big yikes. I'm just keeping that alive. Remember, I only have my command centers hotkeyed, by the way. I'm getting range now. You want to get range eventually? Will I survive, though? This is going to be... This is going to be interesting. I keep not making my I'm gonna hotkey one factory so I can go back to it. So I can do this, okay? Macro like this, so I don't have to scroll up like an idiot. So I hope you guys don't think that's cheating. Now I'm gonna get a couple turrets just to be, you know, just because I can afford it. I'm really mostly gated by my gas income. That's a terrible fucking... So, okay, I'm just gonna go scout with these guys. Since my opponent made like early Hydras and Overlord speed, I'm not gonna play aggressively because I just don't have to. And now, you know, you see Overlord speed, you see a bunch of Hydras, you're instantly thinking drops are a possibility. But I'm sitting in my base right now, so it doesn't matter for now. But when we will push out, it will be a consideration. See how I'm just never missing SCVs? Okay, so our opponent has an extra base with a bunch of drones. I'm gonna start making tanks off this. So again, we're on that plan of making stuff happen. 1-1 push. And I'm still gonna spam turrets, but it's gonna be like anti-drop turrets, okay? Just to show you guys, you can always just spend your minerals like that. Whether they're going mutas or... whether they're going mutas or... whatever the fuck. Hydras. Oh, and I forgot to get an academy. That was a mistake. So basically, if you see Hydras, you can delay Goliath range in favor of faster third factory. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah. Why not? Like, what are you getting the Goliath range for? I mean, it's like just a small... It's like a very basic... just a very basic premise. No? Very basic argument. When does Zerg start holding against the 1-1 Goliath push? When they're better than you. That's when. They start holding the 1-1 Goliath push when they're a better player than you. So it depends on your rating. You can scale this into fucking pro gamer territory if you want. I mean, the problem is this build's not that good later because it's very obvious. It's very telegraphed. So again, I'm gonna push out 10:30. Remember? Even with this fat supply block, we're gonna kill this guy. Now, one thing is you should have Comsats hotkeyed. Okay, my opponent's like grossly out of position. Pull your SCVs. Remember, SCVs are balanced. Oh, fuck. Okay. Scan. See how, I mean, I don't know. That's also why you don't want to rally your factories ahead, because, you know, you need them to defend against counterattacks. What is the Zerg counter to this? Just win. I don't think any A rank Z can hold 1-1 Goliath push even if the Terran is better. No. I mean, yeah, obviously, like, it gets easier, but if the Terran's good, they can make it work. Because you can start throwing in, like, variations. Like, you can start going vulture upgrades, you can go more vultures, less vultures. You can skip attacking with your Goliaths. You can always have, like, a different mix-up and better optimization. So you see how it doesn't matter what my fucking hotkey setup is, guys. I played with completely different hotkeys there. Like, I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't fucking matter, dude. I can get S rank with a completely different hotkey setup, dude. I promise you that. Just like I can get S rank playing different fucking races. Yeah, but my setup won't be dog shit. I mean, sure, I won't. I'll have like some. I mean, it will follow some internal logic. You know, like it's not gonna be completely random. But if you think like, I don't know. I think people have overly cynical and evaluations of others, of like learners. Like most people that will learn this game and successfully improve and get better at it aren't gonna be like brain dead. You know, they're not gonna be like these animals that can't think. I think that's the thing. Like, people tend to baby others because for the most part, the most vocal learners are the most like retarded learners, honestly. You know. Because they're asking just fucking inane, stupid questions. Whereas like a person who's capable of actually learning will just sit there and absorb the information regardless of, you know, how it's being transmitted. So I think more vocal people tend to like steer the educational stuff into the educational approach into this area where it's like you feel like you need to baby like the lowest common denominator, which I don't think is the case. No, Eskia is actually, I really like Eskia. He has very good interjections. Like he always has something very smart to say, or like to present the information in a good way. Like, you know, the whole point he made about having benchmarks and just sharing his own like algorithm or whatever. Like, oh, I make 1 depot per base that I have, and that's like really smart. I would never think of fucking doing that because I'm brain dead. And I know that definitely might help other people, so. What are you saying right now? Another thing that's important for lower ranks, processing the information that they have scouted. Like, yes and no, right? Like, Because, like I've shown you that one game, you don't need to, what's it called? You don't need to scout. You know, like I didn't scout anything, and I held, not only did I hold like an all-in, but I also killed the opponent without any scouting whatsoever. And that's because, again, I follow my build order line, you know, and my opponent didn't. So, easy win. So, I think, because it's an important skill to adapt to what your opponent is doing, and it becomes increasingly more important. But I think at lower levels, people tend to internalize their losses as being caused by decision making when it's more so caused by execution. Like if you're just missing workers left, right, and center, you shouldn't sit there thinking, oh, I should have done X, Y, Z different. No, you should sit there and just focus on making workers. I barely scout, you know. It's only last game where I kind of was, you know, I don't know, I just happened to do it. I was like, well, this guy went Hydras, I'm going to skip my Goliath range. But you don't have to. I could have definitely won Goliath range that game and still won. You know? It only starts mattering more as you get up the ratings. Now, unfortunately, oh, look who it is, man. The one and only. Unfortunately, I'm kind of going to be getting out of the... you know, if I could... I feel like you guys will have to kind of take my word on this, because I can't prove it by, you know, induction of like sitting in D rank and playing 50 games and showing you guys like you can literally have the most unoptimal setup or unoptimal decision making and still win. But, you know, even that game, I could have definitely gone Goliath range or, you know, before my third factory, and I would have definitely still won. So it's not that important, but yeah, I mean, those are, I think it's a good illustration for showing the types of decisions that you can make as you get better at the game and how they can impact your game, basically. He is Protoss and I am Terran. What would be the best all-in build? Just BBS, man. Alright, speaking of Terran versus Protoss. Finally, something that's not Zerg. So, I know last time I showed you guys 2 Factory, which I think is still... Motherfucker. After Terran does an SCV rush to Protoss, what should Protoss do after he gives up the Nexus? I mean, just tech up to OBS is the easiest way to play, I feel like. If you could just tech up to OBS and then double expand, I think it's the most standard way to play. Okay, I need to leave a game because we're getting... Okay, I'm going to leave a couple games, actually. So if you guys have questions... Yeah, I mean, you could build a Reaver, but then that's pretty high variance, right? Like, sometimes it might just completely botch. But I think if you give up your Nexus, just get Goon range. And then Observers. And then you push out and take your third base. It's really good. Yeah, I'll play this guy, and then I'll leave the next games so we can have a couple more games in this rating. So I'm trying to think, like, What would be the best build to teach in this matchup? Now, I think in my opinion, you should just be doing like a 2 base type of push is the overall strategy. And I know last time I did F to S, like not last week, but the week prior, I guess, or maybe it was 3 weeks ago, I was doing 2 factories. And the reason why I think doing like a 2 factory build is nice is because it's very simple and it's very kind of easy to incrementally improve it. Just like, for example, I think that TVZ build is very easy to understand and kind of improve because, you know, all you're doing is attacking at 1030 no matter what with 1-1 upgrades. So, or you're attacking with 1-1 upgrades rather, not at 1030. So you can just focus on trying to, every single game you play, you can focus on just trying to have more stuff at that timing or having it faster. And 2 factory and TVP is kind of the same thing. It's very simple. You know, you just do this attack and you have like I don't know what I'm talking about. You have you do this attack and you can kind of just do it better every single game. But I was thinking probably I should show you guys how to wall. You know, if you know how to wall your ramp, that's like a really good thing to do at lower levels. I think I'll just do like a normal siege expand, just very, very standard way to play. Very potato, don't really have to think too much. If you're feeling confident in microing against zealots, then you don't need to wall. But if you really are scared of like early zealot pressure, you are going to need to wall. But if we encounter zealot pressure, I'll just show you guys. It's very easy to deal with if you just stay calm, you know. So again, 9 depot, 11 racks, 12 gas, 17 factory here. Okay, very standard. You want to make a marine here, a second marine instead of the SCV. Just keep making these marines. Why am I end scout? Oh, whatever. I don't know why I'm end scouting, man. And we'll do a 3 depot expand, okay? 3 depot expand because it's the most stable way to play. I think if you play 2 depot expand, it can be a bit hard to manage. So notice also when I started my factory, I took SCVs off gas. And when my factory finishes, when machine shop starts, I'm going to put SCVs back on gas. I'm making marines non-stop. You can maybe just keep 4 marines, honestly, is fine. It's a decent number. We're going to scout here. Okay, my opponent's dragoons. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much because I'm going to do the same thing no matter what. And you want to start a tank first. You can play around with this order, okay? Like, do you want to start your command center first? Do you want to start tank first? But I started tank first, then I made a command center. The reason I don't know is because I don't actually play like this, and it's not, like, super optimal, so it's a different feeling that you have, like... But it doesn't really matter. And then I started siege mode. And then I'm gonna start my eBay first. You wanna start your eBay around like 425. Unless against two pylon citadel, you have to start like eBay at 4 minutes, but this game, my opponent kind of just didn't do anything. Like, whatever. We just didn't see it this game. Hopefully we'll run into... It's kind of easy to scout 2 pylon citadel. Because the Protoss has, like, they have to cut a dragoon or some shit. So now we have siege and we have an eBay. I'm gonna make one turret at my ramp. We're gonna make one turret at the natural. Okay. Yeah, how absolutely simple this is. And this is basically this is just for detection, okay? And we can make a bunker as well, just to be extra safe. Transfer your SCVs. Okay. This whole time I've been making tanks non-stop. SCVs non-stop. Now I'm gonna make my second factory. You can also move this racks here to the front if you want. Notice I'm not scouting at all. Second factory started. I'm gonna start my armory now. That I think was a DT probably. And I'm just making non-stop tanks for now. I'm gonna start my academy as well. So 2-fact armory academy. Around 610, you can get a turret at your main. This is good for basically DT drop. Generally, you always want to have this turret set up. If you start putting turrets outside versus like Reavers, for example, you can easily die to something like DT drop. Now my armory finished, so I'm going to get my second gas. Start +1. You can get +1 is really strong even if you're not playing upgrade Terran. I'm only making tanks off one factory for now, but whatever. It doesn't really matter how you do this. Oops. Get your scanners when the academy finishes. And around now, I would say, like 7:38, or like when your second gas finishes, you want to start making these factories. So you can even cut tank production here. Notice how I'm making vultures to have extra gas so I can put down the factories. Try not to miss too many workers. And you don't need to scan anything because we're basically gonna attack at around 100 supply, 110 supply. Also, you want to get Goliaths in range, and you want to just get all your machine shop upgrades. It doesn't really matter what order, because you're not gonna attack before having all of them. And just don't miss workers, basically. Just make depots, don't miss workers. At around, you know, once you have 100 energy on both these scanners, you can start scanning. Just to see what your opponent is up to. I would get 4 Goliaths total, because 4 Goliaths allow you to 2-shot shuttles. You can use the scan to just kill this observer. I'm gonna scan my opponent's base. I mean, you don't really need to scan your opponent's base if you don't know what you're looking for. I'm looking at this and I'm just confused. My opponent's doing a non-build. Honestly, I think we can probably make Goliaths and win. Like, you don't need to make vultures with this build, but so remember, we're going to basically attack at around 110 supply, like I said. These two factories are making machine shops, or are making tanks. These factories are making vultures. I have everything on a separate control group, but you do as you wish. If you see the observers, you can scan and shoot them down. It really helps you. If you don't notice them, it's okay. and just push across the map. Okay, maybe I'm being a bit too executional here. And also, when you're doing these types of builds, always bring SCVs with you, okay? And then when your +1 finishes, so just keep your units together, siege up a couple of these tanks, then... I mean, it is hard when you're playing someone who knows what they're doing, I guess, but... We're just gonna slowly push it across the map. I'll try not to over control. And as with every timing attack we've done, we can always build a command center before you push out, okay? So you have a backup plan basically. And just try and keep making units as you push forward, just keeping your units together. I don't even know what the Protoss is doing. As I'm getting closer to the Protoss' base, I am going to start sieging and leapfrogging. You're going to have to learn how to leapfrog your tanks like this. Make turrets. You see that observer? We're just going to scan it, kill it. We can put a couple of mines down. We're getting flanked from behind. Just bring your vultures, hold position. Make sure everything's firing. Target fire the dragoons with your tanks if you can. So yeah, I haven't even reinforced this attack. Okay, now that we fought, we just have all these units here, and then we're bringing them all here. Okay. I don't know, maybe that was... That was kind of high execution there, but our opponent was pretty good, I think. Okay, it helps. Yeah, see, our opponent went DTs, but we had a... That's why you have to get your eBay at like 425-ish. 420. 420. If it was 2 pylon... Was this 2 pylon DT? No, because this was range. So that's why... If your opponent skips range for DTs, you need eBay at 4 minutes, like very, very fast eBay. You have to cut for it. But if not, like 420 is a good timing. Yeah, and you can literally do this every single game. Every single game, getting siege tanks like this is super safe. And then 3 turrets. 1 at the net, 1 at the ramp, and then eventually 1 at the main. The 1 at the main can be delayed a bit because the 1 at the main is basically defense against shuttles, like any type of shuttle. And the shuttle can only come so fast. I mean, DTs come faster than shuttles do. So, you know, just logically... The reason I built the one at the ramp first was obviously because I still didn't have control of my NAT. But then once I get my NAT with my units, then I get that turret up as well. And yeah. So just follow this kind of configuration. And then you just want to go into 2 base, 5, 6 factory. Now, the difficult part with, see how that DT just got smacked. The difficult part with this type of play as Terran is just optimizing your build order, because you can, like, tanks are extremely expensive units, and basically a tank costs about as much as a factory does. And so every time you're making a tank, it's like an active decision that can definitely delay your build order. But if you give yourself like some metrics, like okay, at 7 minutes or 7:30 or 8 minutes, I'm gonna put down my factories. Then that'll teach you to just be like, okay, let's say like this game, I made factories at 7:30. I cut all my tank production at 7:30, and I just started making factories. As to when you get your gas, whenever you build an armory, you should just get your second gas when your armory finishes. Okay. It's like a good rule of thumb overall. This game I went 2 factories into armory. I think it's the best way to do this build. Hopefully, well, first of all, I didn't push with 1-1. I pushed at 110 supply. So you're not going to have 1-1 with this build. You're only going to have +1 attack. And I always push at 100 or 110 supply. Like there's no, like you need to get to 100 supply and that's it. Like it doesn't matter what the Protoss is doing. Like these types of timings, even in TVZ and TVP, it doesn't really matter what your opponent is doing. Like, and it scales linearly with your execution. So the better you are at executing it, the harder it is for the opponent to stop. And really, it's up, like there's this concept in some of these games where it doesn't really matter. Like I think people sometimes overthink it. There are some builds where the burden of like the strategical burden, like the just as you are trying to optimize to execute your push, your opponent also has to optimize to execute their defense. So there are certain situations when you're going to base like this as Terran, Protoss has to know how to optimize their own build order to have enough units to hold your attack. And if your opponent's just not doing that correctly, they will die. So like kind of the onus is on them more so than it is on you for making adjustments, because you're just making this proactive build. Like you have this proactive strategy that is going to do one thing like regardless of what's going on in the game, whereas your opponent is in a reactive position. So whether my opponent went third base or not, I don't give a fuck, because my overall strategy is the same. Just push out 110 supply. So map control overrated, just run them over with stuff. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this is exactly the point I'm trying to illustrate, is that I'm not even teaching you guys any kind of there's literally no thinking whatsoever in any of these games. At least not the tactical type of thinking that you guys might expect or to see, where it's like, oh, what's my opponent do? Like, and again, lower level players think that they have to scout their opponent and kind of adjust to what they're doing. And the point I'm trying to drive across is you don't. You 100% don't. If you just focus on yourself, it doesn't matter what your opponent is doing. And to be honest, this concept scales even into, like, it scales at all levels. At all levels. Like, at all levels, there are players that are just better executionally than you are. And it can, like, one of your wins or losses can come down to just that. So you shouldn't always be looking at, but this is extremely true at lower levels. You know, once you get to S rank territory, once you get to like the basic fundamentals, like entry level point, then strategy starts to play a bigger role in, like, you know, overall like tactics and stuff like that, like thinking, quote unquote thinking. But until you get to that point, you should really just focus on making workers and units. That's it, which is what I'm doing. Like, look at my huge worker advantage, man. My opponent's missing so many probes. So it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what my opponent's doing. I'm just going to have more stuff than him, you see? And it's important for you guys to understand this. Yeah, with oven mitts. And this comes down to that fucking line theory I was telling you guys about, man. It's important to get these things down. That's why, time and time again, if you're a new player and you kind of ask more experienced players to coach you, time and time again, someone in the chat said it's like StarCraft 2 all over again where I'm maxing on roaches. More experienced players don't want to bother, like, there's no strategy at lower levels. There's just simply no strategy because you have to work on your fundamentals. That's the most important part of the game. The strategy can only come, like the meta, the strategy only comes once you're able to hit your build orders and hit your workers, hit your infrastructure timings. That line that I was talking about, that's the only time when strategy comes into play. Until then, it doesn't matter what your opponent is doing if you can't macro properly, you see? And this has the knockoff effect of you just kind of win games if you can make more stuff at this level. But the point isn't that you win by mechanics. It's more so trying to prevent you from losing because of your execution. Because, we can look at how it's working for myself for the Terran end in this game. And I'm talking about, okay, if you just hit your timings, you win. But conversely, if we look at the Protoss, like, why did the Protoss lose this game? It has nothing to do with the strategy. Like, the Protoss player is just being executionally dismantled, basically. Like, the Protoss player don't have their fundamentals in order. So, like, what I'm doing by teaching you guys these things right here is I'm trying to prevent what is happening to this Protoss player. You see? No, Zerg, no, that's not true, Bod. There's Zerg, you also don't need to have some inane, like, that is 100% not true. 100% not true. Like, people have this conception of Zerg as, oh, you need to have this esoteric, like, decision-making knowledge to, like, know when to make workers or not. No, you don't. You can literally just give yourself, like, some silly, like, first of all, just go watch Hawks F to S if that doesn't have you convinced. But also, you can just give yourself some, like, just contrive, just basic, like, algorithm. Like, I am going to make drones off of this hatchery, and I'm going to make workers off of this other hatchery. And in that case, you're literally just mirroring how the other races function. You don't need to have that much knowledge as Zerg. I mean, it's about the same knowledge as me cutting tanks off these factories to make more factories. Like, it's the same kind of decision making. But it's not this more, like, crazily contrived, like, harder thing. It's just, it presents itself as more difficult because to the less experienced player, they kind of see the concept in an exaggerated form. But as you get more experience with the game, you realize Zerg doesn't really play the same as Zerg plays similarly to the other races. They also have certain breakpoints. Like, they can only make drones in certain situations. Then they have to make units. Like, it's not this, like, runaway effect that when you're inexperienced you kind of default to as an interpretation for how Zerg works. Zerg is about as like structured as the other races. Like, it's not, you can find, like, a good build order, a good algorithm for kind of progressing your Zerg build that isn't basically what I'm trying to say is you can find a simple algorithm for drone production that works in almost every situation. It doesn't have to be this, like, insane, like, decision making process every time you make a drone. Based on those benchmarks, shifting around and optimizing resource allocation is important too. The way you made vaults to add more factory. Yeah, of course, but It's also like it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this esoteric decision making process. It can just be like, okay, I'm gonna make factories at 7:30. So at 7:30, I'm gonna cut my production to make the factories. Like that's a very simple decision. You know, it's not complicated. Like I think when you're inexperienced, and this is true for anything, like you kind of see this world of like endless possibility. Like you look at StarCraft and you're like, oh, like you can imagine like, oh, so you're gonna have to know this and that and this and that, and it can be like it's just this crazy range. But as you play it more and more and more, and you get closer to that line, you get closer to kind of the actual the actual metaphysics of the game. Like it can only be played in a certain it has boundaries. Like once you get closer to that executional boundary, you realize that like infinite possibility, that infinite range of like decisions that you can make narrows progressively down. And it's not as like crazy as you think. It's not as like, oh, so fucking high level as you think. Like it's not as complex as you think, you see? Yeah, you get banned for playing Warzone, bitch. I'm pretty sure this isn't actually helping anyone, man. But we press on. We press on. Oh, TJ, thanks, man. It's helping shut the fuck up. Thank you. Another Zerg gamer. I guess we're just never gonna learn any other matchups. So I'm gonna do a bio build just to spice things up because I feel like I've shown you guys that Goliath build enough. So I'll show you guys the most basic opening. Yeah, we've had mostly Zergs. So the problem with, you'll see, the reason why I think mech is just easier to play, well, it's obviously easier to play, but it's also simpler to teach and it's simpler to grasp, and you can kind of just ignore what's going on, and you don't need to have good execution at all. But you'll see, playing like standard TVZ like bio is not as simple, I feel like. It's not as simple. I'm trying to think. I mean, you should really, I guess you guys should learn how to play with tank push really early on. I don't know why I'm playing on Ascension. This is not a good map for beginners, but whatever. We're just going to do tank push. 2 racks into tank push, I feel like, is the best way to learn this matchup. The best way to learn this matchup. So again, 9 depot 11 racks. I can't believe someone literally just said 9 depot 11 racks doesn't work at lower levels. That was the most insane thing I've ever fucking heard, dude. But yeah, definitely, again, the only reason I'm playing bio this game is because I've literally played like 4 games of mech. I feel like I've gotten the point across, and you guys get to see a bit more diversity here. But I do strongly recommend you guys to play mech if you're new, okay? Now, here's the first piece of information. If you scout hatch first like this, first try, you can go 15 command center, okay? Otherwise, you go 18 command center. Otherwise, here, I would make Marine Depot. I would make a second Depot Marine and keep making SCVs. And I would end up taking this command center around 18, 19, depends when you confirm the hatchery from your opponent, okay? And then I don't make Marines quite yet. By the way, it was a 16 command center, 15 command center, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. 17 racks, and then I make a Marine here. I make a Marine because generally in this situation, a lot of Zergs at higher level will, when they see you go 15 command center, they will make 6 lings to force you to make a bunker, and you need like a Marine to defend, okay? Oh, well, I forgot to build a depot, guys, so forehead. We can play with a disadvantage, it's okay. So this is like pretty massive potato block, but we can definitely come back from this. I do feel bad though, because now you guys don't see the build order, but anyway, I get gassed in Academy at some point. It's just I don't miss so many fucking SCVs. Fucking disaster. So because my economy is absolute dog, first of all, I'm not gonna transfer. I'm gonna transfer a couple of SCVs, but I'm not gonna mine gas right away with 3 SCVs. So I only have 2 SCVs on my gas. Generally, if this was normal, you would get 21 gas and then 23 academy, okay? And around 4 minutes, you can make a bunker, but because I see that my opponent's like, if you keep this SCV alive, you don't need to make a bunker, but you can, okay? Now, I mean, I can make a bunker too to show you guys that I'll just make a bunker, it doesn't matter. So, Academy finishes. This Spire is actually quite late. Making this bunker is fine. And because I kind of scouted what my opponent was doing, like, I don't need to get the scans right away, but you can. Like, as soon as the academy finishes. So with 2 racks you can kind of pressure, but it's very contingent. It's very conditional, I would say. So generally I would recommend that you don't pressure unless you know what you're doing, because this move out can straight up die to just mass slings and then you're dead, okay? So just stay in your base, in my opinion. Then we're gonna get an eBay at 445, like I said. Of course, it's really late this game because I'm sandbagging like a tremendous amount, but also my opponent's Spire is really late. So we'll be fine, even though our eBay is definitely late. Definitely late. And then start your factory before you start +1 on your eBay, okay? So generally it's like, it'll end up being around 545. And then you want to make 2 turrets like this at your knot, 1 turret at your main, and then 1 turret around your production / ramp. And then when these turrets finish, you can make another turret, and another turret, and another turret, okay? You can keep a couple Marines in this bunker. And I'm just making Marines off my racks. So I'm making another turret there. I'm gonna make another turret here. I'm gonna make another turret here. It doesn't really matter how you, I mean, you can get better at placing them, but it also doesn't really matter for the most part, okay? And I'm just making units and SCVs. My units are defending. Factory finishes, get the add-on, and start your starport. And when you start your starport, get your second gas. Now sometimes when Zerg plays really aggressively, you don't have the economy for this, but, you know. And start +1 when you can afford it, after the factory, okay? And at this point, you know, once you, I mean, it doesn't really, I guess I'm teaching you guys like more esoteric shit, but you can scan, you know, our opponent has a lot of drones, like a decent amount of drones. So they're playing, I mean, they're playing pretty pretty safe, I would say. But at the same time, like, because I'm sandbagging so hard, my perception of what Zerg has is kind of different because my timings are all kind of messed up, so. And then the other part is just make sure your units are together and focus fire every time. And when you see the mutas fly away, just bring all your units together. Now, see, you know, we definitely have a weakness in our setup here. And I'm defending, so I'm just waiting for this push. But as you get better, you can also just proactively move out on the map and force the mutas away by threatening an attack. But it is hard to play like that, so I recommend just defending until you get, you know, your tanks and vessels. Alright? You can also just make more turrets, you know, and you don't need to always, like, focus fire, you can just kind of A move. So, like, even here, for example, like, I'm just gonna make more turrets to defend these outer depots, not a big deal. And this is why, like, for example, yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, sometimes your opponent just kills themselves, man. And just like that, we're in C rank, guys. It was that easy. Okay, I need to veto that. So, if you're new, I forgot I just played on this account, that's why. So if you're new, I went over these vetoes like in the first episode or the first part. But I would recommend this setup, okay? In my opinion. Whether you keep Lark or Good Night, it's up to you. These two, interchangeable. But Eclipse, Fighting Spirit, Polypoid, very standard. Okay? Yeah, it's gonna be on YouTube. And yeah, our opponent was just potato, man, honestly. What's wrong with Fighting Spirit and TVP? Nothing. So to explain some things, like with this 2 racks, generally, you can do that move out with 7 Marines, 2 medics. But you really need to have good information, like scouting information. It really basically depends on how long you can keep your SCV alive. Because the more you can confirm what the link count is, the easier it is to do the push out, you know. But if you're like just blindly 2 racks like pressure, move out or whatever, it's gonna be really high variance. Like you're gonna end up losing a decent amount of the time to just a Zerg that makes like 12 links randomly. But this game, because, you know, I keep my SCV alive for so long. It's very easy for me to push out, but I don't. You don't have to do that push out. You can kind of just keep your units back and just tech to tanks and vessels, okay? No, he didn't go speedling first. He went lair. He was lair first. Oh my god, dude. It's just TVZ, man. Why not go for a Valkyrie in that spawn instead of a science vessel? Because Valkyries fucking suck, dude. Because Valkyries do nothing against lurkers. Don't make Valkyries, man. Never make Valkyries unless you know what you're doing. In which case you wouldn't be watching this tutorial, so just never make Valkyries, please. And also, Valkyries are literally worthless if you don't know how to micro them. Like, if you don't know how to do the patrol shot consistently, they're terrible units. They're absolutely awful units. So, yeah, so we're gonna do the 2 racks build again. Hopefully I won't scoff it up, you know? It won't be scuffed. Sorry. When can I make BBCs? Yeah, yeah. So again, 11 racks. And I'll show you guys here how to double scout as well. Very important. Should we mix in the occasional cheese? No, never fucking cheese. You should pick one build and stick to it, man. Never fucking do anything else. You're an absolute, if you're like, basically if you're not S rank and you're trying to do more than one build order, you're doing it wrong. So 12 scout and then 14 scout, okay? Double scout. And this is to basically find whether our opponent is going pull first or not. Now, because I saw the Overlord there, I know my opponent is here, so I can already bring my second SCP back, okay? And the reason you need to scout pull first is because if you just put down your command center at your natural against pull first, you insta lose. You have to pull SCVs to your ramp. So for example, the early game setup I have, F key wise, is F2 main, F3 natural, F4 at my ramp. Okay, so I can quickly pull SCVs if I see Zerglings out on the map. So hatch first. So we are going to take our expansion now that we confirmed hatchery first. And you know, this time around we didn't get that juicy 15 command center, but it's not that bad. Like it doesn't really matter. So you don't have to be too stressed out about that. So second racks when you can afford it. And I would take my gas after these 3 Marines. So 3 Marines, gas, and then Academy. And then you can resume making Marines. So 3 Marines, gas, and then Academy. If you want to play safer, you can... I guess I could show the safer version as well. This is kind of the build that I do in general. But if you want to play safer, you can get you can just non-stop make Marines off this racks. I guess I'll show you. I'll show that next time. You can non-stop make Marines off your first racks. Get a 3rd depot first, then get your 2nd racks, and then gas, something like that. But this way, the way that I'm doing it is just fast Academy. And fast Academy is really important because it's just important to basically get range like as soon as possible. That's really why you want to get the faster academy, is so you can get range, because at higher levels you need range to fight Mutalisks, or else you die basically. So stim as soon as my academy finishes. Oh, that was that's a lot of lings. So I'm gonna make 2 fire bats. Okay, I feel like anyone could make that decision right there. A lot of lings, so I make fire bats. And then this SCV can kind of scout, so we can pull our SCVs. Again, just I used a fancy trick there. I used my F keys to bring my SCVs to my ramp, okay? If you don't know how I did that, you'll have to ponder it for a sec. And you don't want to, again, like, one mistake a lot of players make, and this is true at almost any level, even at the highest, or like at high level, is, you know, you shouldn't care too much about having defended this aggressive play from the opponent. Like, just continue your build as you would normally. So we're gonna scan when my things are finished, my comm stats are finished, and we see Spire and a bunch of eggs, so obviously this is going to be Mutas. So I'm going to do, again, what I said, 2 turrets at the natural, 1 turret at the main, 1 turret around your ramp, like this, okay? And we're also just going to keep continuing with our build, which is 2, well, just getting the factory ASAP. This is why it's hard to play bio, because there's just a lot more moving parts. And now you can make 2 additional turrets or whatever. And notice how, like, if you kind of get away with making less turrets, you can kind of make this 3rd racks faster. If you don't get supply blocked, that also helps. So in this case, because Zerg opened with like this mass ling flood type build, we're definitely playing a much lower economy TVZ, in which case you don't want to start tank production right away. You actually would rather start your starport first. Because if you start making tanks too early, like basically right now you just want to get the vessel ASAP. Your tank count doesn't really matter too much, okay? But if Zerg plays a much more passive, like less aggressive style, then you can start tanks right away. As like you can start the machine shop right away and get tanks. But because my opponent's playing like a very aggressive line, I'm just gonna get vessels instead first, okay? And just chill like this, just chill. And I'm still making SCVs whenever I can. Try not to get supply blocked. You can also occasionally scan, you know, as you get better, see what's up. My opponent's making Hydras now, so we know they're not going to be much more aggressive with Mutalisks. But our plan, it stays the same. Like, it doesn't change. We're just making tanks and going for that tank push once our vessels are done. So this is like an important decision. Do you go for Radiate or do you go for Siege mode? I think a Radiate's probably slightly better But you can also just make siege mode here. I mean, we can get both. So +1 finished. You can get +2. You can also get +1 armor instead and add your Raxes faster, but +2 is a good for scaling. So how I hotkey is very simple. I just have, okay, let's just stim everything, get these guys inside the bunker, out of range here. Okay, move this guy back. And just make units as, or make buildings as you can afford them. Start +2 here. If you can get this push off without a hitch, then after your first vessel, you can queue up a dropship. Oh, and the other thing I guess I could mention is if you're getting ready to push with like a tank push, just scan the opponent. Okay, my opponent's not actually going to hive, so I don't need to attack right away. I can wait. And you can wait until you have like around 6 tanks or something, or you can wait until you see whether your opponent is teching the hive or not. The only problem with waiting too long is sometimes they go for stuff like drops, and that can be really annoying to deal with if you delay your push too much. But I can just chill for a bit, just gather my forces up. You know, can keep scanning. Now Queen's Nest, obviously my opponent's probably going to want to play Hive soon. But I mean, look at just this drone count. It's like, I mean, this is pitiful, you know. And then you generally transition into a second port. And you slowly will try and get into SK Terran. Basically, tanks are always effective. They're effective until defilers are out. And as you get better, you find uses for your tanks, despite your opponent having Dark Swarm and defilers and stuff. But you know, for the most part, they're definitely not as good as vessels late game. So, and this is something, and you know, you just have to get really good at this. Scan. Okay, my opponent's going hive, so now we can push. Let's say, like, it could be, your decision making could be like that. Your decision making could be, okay, I'm just gonna push when I have 3 tanks, 1 vessel. It could be, I'm pushing when I have 5. It's your choice, you know, play around with the different things. Now you see how I'm scanning different parts of the map, just looking for counterattacks, but for the most part, my army that's coming from my Raxes is gonna be defending against this, okay? And the rest of my attention is here. You can scan around as well, try and find the opponent's army, but obviously my opponent's army is tiny. We raided the shit out of these lurkers with the most broken unit in the game, the vessel. And it's important to have your tanks on a different hotkey than everything else in your vessels as well. This is why you can also just make bunkers at home. And you can, don't be afraid to queue up a bunch in your racks as well. And just win. let's be honest, 99% of C-ranked Terrans would have just lost their natural to that Lurker bust. I don't know. No, not really. I mean, you saw how easily I defended that? We didn't do much. We just moved the one tank out of the way. We put the Marines in the bunker. I don't know, man. Did that look difficult, guys, to you? What I did? Is anything that I am doing look difficult? Let me phrase it this way. Like, it should seem reachable, right? Like, I mean, maybe you're not capable of doing it right now, but if you, let's say you gave yourself 6 months, would you be able to do that in 6 months, you think? If the answer is no, I feel like just, you should reassess your approach. Well, guys, I mean, obviously, I mean, there's a reason I'm not C rank, you know? But, like, what do you guys want me to do? Like, just, like, the thing, so here's the two options we have. One is I sandbag the defense and lose, and then, like, what's the conclusion if I don't hold this? Like, you look at it, and then you're like, well, like, a C rank player wouldn't hold this. So, like, what do you want me to do? You want me to just purposely lose this game, and then we lose this game, and then what? Like, Zerg's fucking busted. What can I do? Or do we have to rethink our entire strategy because we don't have the execution to hold this basic attack? Or do I show you guys, look, it's really easy to hold something like this, and then all of a sudden there's more credibility to this build that I'm showing you guys, this way of playing, because there's options for you to be able to outplay this, right? Like, yeah, I know it's obviously, like, this was a very calm defense, and the biggest thing I did here that most like a C ranker wouldn't do is kite back. And then also I knew that and, you know, this totally caught me off guard because, you know, I was tabbed and like talking to chat and stuff. But the biggest thing is if you commit with your whole marine, like all your Marines here, like there's a point to which in certain angles having more Marines just means more Marines die. So in this, my brain, I instantly recognized kind of just how far up the lurkers burrowed, and I noticed that it's really not a threat to anything, and as long as I just kite these guys back, and then I have this bunker mainly firing on the lurkers in the front, it's going to be more than enough DPS, because I know, like, I saw the way that the Zerg was playing, like the Zerg kind of moves up and they burrow at a certain point, right? And your brain just kind of calculates that, and then you recognize that the threat is only to a certain radius, because you know, a lot of the, I mean, because of the range of the lurkers, obviously, but also there's a bunch of lurkers that are kind of burrowed in the back, right? So as long as you kite outside of a certain radius, you're fine, you know? And just keep kiting the lurkers. So I think probably a worse Terran player would have just kind of like sieged their tanks up here, stimmed everything, and gotten fucked in the ass, right? Like, this is what would happen. You would notice, be like, oh shit, then you would siege these tanks. But I mean, you could definitely siege these tanks and run the Marines, like, down here and, like, flank. But yeah, probably a worse Terran player would have just sieged these tanks and stimmed everything forward, and then they would have gotten fucked. But you can just kind of chill. My SimCity is too. My SimCity is fucking awful, dude. I have this eBay out in the fucking in Africa, blocking my turrets. StarCraft is honing all these small mini games, making scouting, mini games be scouting, executing build order. I think it's good to show a bare bones game without opponent on how to basically play the game, use interface. No, I don't think so, man. Who's that useful for? Like a complete like newbie who's never played the game? I think everyone knows that already and they can see it through these games. We're already at C rank anyway. Like, we're past the complete potatoes, man. We're not in F rank territory, and I haven't even shown you guys TVT. C rank Terrans die against this push? Yeah, well, that's why you're C rank, man. Get better. What do you want me to fucking say? I just showed you how to stop it, right? Like, I don't understand. Like, honestly, that I don't understand this idea of like pointing out, oh well, a lower ranked player would lose here. So like, what do you want me to do? You want me to show you a completely different way of playing to like make up for the fact that you suck? Like, that's what I don't understand. And also, again, I've shown mech like repeatedly where you don't have to deal with any of these situations because your units are fucking super Gundams. How to deal with recall? Most people who watch streams are complete noobs. I mean, to a certain extent. Have a checklist of things for the defense. Have bunker. Have to. Well, I told you guys what the. No, motherfuckers, I told you guys what the algorithm is. This early bunker, this bunker is actually here from the beginning, and it's to deal with speedlings, right? These turrets are here from the Mutalisk stage of the game. There's nothing else. Like, you know, I've talked about the progression of this build, right? This depot also, early game is good for, again, ling speed defense. A common thread I see is that most of these games don't reach late stage games. Yeah, of course they don't, because I'm showing you guys how to do counter or how to do timing attacks, and I just win with them. Now, I mean, should I sandbag to show you guys late game management? I could. Anyway, I mean, listen, like I said, you have to do the work as a learner as well. Like, I can't cover every possible situation. I mean, that's the skill of this game. Like, why do you think there are players that are better than other players in this game? You know, it's not because there's like if the game were easy, then there wouldn't be skill differentiation, right? Like, you guys have to do your own work to become better for yourselves, no? Like, I can't cover every single possible permutation of these situations. I mean, I could, you know, I could, if we talked about meta stuff, like, I could be much more precise with stuff, but, I mean, most of you guys don't even have the execution to do that, so it's pointless. No? Do I have an internal rotation of set SV to mine, make depot, make units, repeat? No, I don't. I just do stuff, man. But again, I'm not the type of person that like color codes my note taking and highlights with like different colors and has post-it notes. Maybe there's other people that have an internal rotation of what they do. So basically you're saying we have to play the game to get actually better? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously, right? It goes without saying. And I'm showing you guys it's possible. Like, I think for the C rank player that dies to that Zerg build, what's more useful? To like show someone losing, being like, oh yeah, you're just gonna lose at it at C rank? Or show that you can easily beat it if you just play calmly. And then they see how you do it, and then they can kind of, when they're faced, they can draw inspiration from your own play, and then when they're faced with that situation themselves, they can integrate it in their play, no? So that's why I don't really understand what the point of saying stuff like, oh, well, you know, like, usually, like, if you're a C rank, you die to this. Like, what's the point of saying that? Or, like, if you're F rank, I can't do this. Like, okay, just get better and be able to do it, you know? Like, that's the solution. It's not like, oh, change the rules of the game completely because I'm incapable of executing it. I mean, that's why we have garbage fucking games, you know? Because every single game developer is fucking literally pandering to fucking potatoes, right? That's why we have dog shit games, because there's a vocal minority of people saying, oh, I can't do that, and then the game developers fucking turn towards that lowest common denominator, and they're like, oh shit, we gotta make the game accessible. No, just get better at the game, guys. Yeah, Chris Mura, I appreciate it. I do have confidence in what I'm saying. Like, I know that there will be people that will take away stuff from it. But it's just my critical nature showing, you know? The same critical nature that I have when I play the game. How do you get E rank? I lost 5 placement matches in a B rank. Yeah, I just kept losing. I just kept searching and leaving. People idolize all this skill stuff too much, which is why they put it on a pedestal and think it's impossible. Just my thoughts. Yeah, that's an interesting take, man. I agree. I mean, I think people definitely, they like painting a picture of, like, when they watch pros play, they're like, wow, the pros are so good, they can keep track of absolutely everything. And it's like they turn it into this, like, godly skill, subsequently also making it seem as it's like as being either like just unreachable or something, but it's not. It's just a lot of practice, guys. Like, it's literally just a lot of practice. Like, the reason I can do all of this is because I have literally played this game for fucking decades. No? Like, so alright, we press on. Talk through games. Well, I can also talk through games through, like, when I play higher rated, but the reason I don't is because a lot of the times I use my stream, like, I practice on my stream, you see, and if I play higher rated players, it's not about what rating they are, it's more about how much I want to focus on my practice, and I tend to just start tilting and stuff if I'm not focusing. But I could, like, if I tell myself I'm gonna have a chill stream where I ladder on this, like, I can easily talk through games even at S rank. I mean, I won't be playing as well, obviously, but I could easily talk through them as well. So finally a TVT. Well, because this is C rank, and I don't really know what to teach you guys. I'm gonna have to, like, basically tank my rating to teach TVT at lower level. But I think C rank, we're kind of getting closer to, like, playing more normal builds. So I'll just play, like, a very standard game. and teach you guys the fundamentals of like the meta TVT, because it's C rank and this guy's kind of closer to B rank. So I feel like it's fair. And you can maybe apply some of it to your games. Although I am thinking I could just do an overall decent, yeah, well, I'll try and, I hope I'm not gonna get fucked this game. So again, depot racks. Placing the racks to the side like this, the main idea is that you can kind of place it closer to your opponent's base so that when you lift the racks it gets there faster. But also, having it be out of the way of like the scouting SCV just makes it harder for your opponent to figure out exactly what you have right away. Like sometimes they might think that you're proxying or something. Like generally a really good opponent obviously won't, because they'll just check around your base, but you know, it's good from that perspective as well. So you can go 14 scout, 15 scout, it doesn't really matter too much. I think 14 scout's probably better. 15 scout's a bit late on 2-player maps. And you can make a marine here for sure. If you make a marine, I would cancel this SCV to get a factory on time, but we don't really care too much about optimizing our factory timing at this rating, obviously. And then you can get a second marine. So you want to get 2 marines off this racks. 2 marines is really good. Again, I mentioned this at some point. But it's good for killing the racks, the opponent's scouting racks, and it's also good for having marines to defend against wraiths. So marines can just chill here. Kill this SC, you know. One thing that I'm looking at is how much gas is being mined. So, and how many marines are being made, but this looks very standard from our opponent. Like, our opponent's clearly going to expand off of this. When your factory finishes, you can make a vulture. We saw this command center, so we don't need to rescout. If you didn't see the command center, you could rescout. So I'm going to make 1 vulture. You can also just make a machine shop right away, but 1 vulture overall is pretty decent, and you can push out with it to poke around and see what's up. Okay, so, you know, our opponent also made a vulture. The one thing you want to really look out for is, if they have vultures, generally they're going for a vulture build. But you can also just do this build yourself. You go tank, then armory, then second factory. And this is going to be safe against pretty much everything. But you will play a bit more defensively against 3 factory builds, because obviously you just don't have the early game presence to contest the opponent. And if you get 2 factories like this, if you go tanks right away, you can get a second gas. I could have started my armory a bit earlier, like as soon as my factory finished, but it's okay. And the big so early on, like in the early game in TVT, you kind of have like a rock, paper, scissors situation in a sense, in a very reductionist sense, where 3 factory vulture is a bit weak against starport opening, which is weak against this 2 factory Goliath opening, armory, which is weak to the 3 factory opening, right? So, but the thing is, if you open like 3 factories, you really lose hard against wraiths. Like, it's really hard to deal with it. So, in my opinion, if you open like this every game, it's good. So, 2 factories like this, get 4 Goliaths, can start Siege. Siege is the first, when you go tank, Siege is the first upgrade you want to get. And it's important to get this Armory Academy, because you need to get scans to deal with mines. Because your opponent's always going to have this like advantage on you. So now that I have 4 Goliaths, I'm going to get this second add-on because I want to make vultures eventually. And I'm going to make tanks off this for now. Then I'm going to add 2 more factories. So when you open 2 factories, you want to go into 4 factories, generally speaking, okay? To catch up on vulture production. Because we're gonna kind of counter pressure the map once we establish our units outside here. So scan finished. I'm gonna push out. Try not to get your units killed. And really the point is to just siege up like this. And behind this I'm making tanks. Okay. This is annoying. So just deal with that. It's important to just keep making SCVs as well. Get my upgrades. And just kind of slowly push out. The most important part of TVT is, seriously guys, is non-stop SCV production. Non-stop SCV production, okay? So our opponent's taking a 3rd base. That's fine. I'm gonna scan the main just to see what's up. Okay, our opponent's just playing very standard. We can also take our 3rd base here. Totally A-okay. Scan out, kill more mines. Our opponents, you know, they're starting to get competent now. Like, this guy is pretty decent. I'm gonna wait for my vulture upgrades first. Really, right now, I'm just thinking about taking my 3rd base, but also just making units off this factories. Now I'm gonna go out with vultures as well, try and establish some map control. Just put mines wherever you can. Okay, my opponent's covering that, so I'm just gonna move back. Well, can kill these guys off. I can also start getting a starport. Well, I want to start my command center first. Damn. Okay, well, we'll just push out here. We should have more units than our opponent does, but okay. I'm just pushing because my opponent took such a fast 3rd base. I should have more units than him. Somehow my command center is just not building. And I'm building that base, this extra command center, I'm building it in my base because by moving all my units out, I have no defense against the counterattack from my opponent's vultures, so. And instead of committing all these units to attack here, thereby giving up this position, I'm just going to use my reinforcements instead to go and attack this. While basically these units here kind of choke my opponent from reinforcing the 3rd base. Okay, it's very simple concept. And as we're going into 3 bases, we can go up to 6 factories. Make sure you scan in the path here so you don't get caught off guard by mines. You can start getting Goliath range as well. And just slowly but surely coming here. Get your science facility. It's important to get +2, like the upgrades on this matchup, very important. Have your tanks target enemy tanks. Have these Goliaths just kind of chill. And just reinforce. Like, I know there's no, there are no mines on this path, so I can easily just reinforce through it. We confirmed that earlier. Okay, just bring these units back. Also go up to a couple more factories. I need these guys to clear that mine there. Just constantly pressuring here. I mean, my opponent's doing a good job defending. So once you're on 3 base, you can start using your starport. My E-base a bit late this game. And now my opponent basically kind of defended pretty decently here, so we're just going to slow down a bit. Start my command center to float it. I don't want to take my command center on location for my 4th because right now I'm a bit light on units and you can see my map control isn't very stable. So vultures can kind of run around everywhere, so that's a huge problem in this matchup to deal with, is vulture harass, right? So you can't, it's like Protoss has to deal with this too. They can't overexpand because they just don't have the units to deal with vultures. So in TVT it's the same concept. You see how I don't have enough tanks to deal with all the possible vulture run by locations? So I just slowed my game down until I do. You see my opponent's gonna just waste a lot of units doing this. And had I tried to take this base and, you know, I have to secure this, whatever, then it's very possible that my opponent would have found good openings to do damage with their vultures. So that's why, you know, it's important to just kind of slow down a bit and chill. But I must say, around C rank, you know, we're starting to play real StarCraft now. I think it's like, you know, especially if they're C rank Koreans, like they definitely have their fundamentals in check that you can't really just sandbag too much. So this is also why I'm not really holding back too much. I mean, I'm definitely playing super slowly, you know, super slowly, just chill. Still trying to explain, so there's a lot of leeway here, but I can definitely tell that you have to start applying like your concepts a bit more at this rank. For sure. I'm just continuously making off the starport. It doesn't matter whether it's dropships or wraiths, although I would definitely encourage you guys to probably make dropships if you don't know which one to make. Now I'm just gonna take this base. I can also expand to the other base. Scan. That's one thing I did kind of poorly. Didn't scan ahead to check for mines. It's a good skill to develop. Around 15 minutes, 14 minutes, you can stop making SCVs. Lost my racks somehow. Build this first, and then send the other SCV to build the base. We can also scan for bases. Okay. I could potentially push forward and take this position as well. It's a bit greedy, but we'll do it. If our opponent lets us get there, we'll definitely do it. And now we can take this base as well. Now we can take a bunch of these units. Well, this is where rates come into play. Is you're now suddenly just putting on a lot of pressure. And around this time you can also start making turrets everywhere. See, our opponent has good upgrades actually. It's also why rates aren't that great. Yeah, you see, this is why rates are just not that good. But we can rotate our rates here. I can still bust this because I just have like a huge advantage. Our opponent has faster upgrades than I do. I potato my upgrades this game for sure. It's that easy. Push out. Take this base. Take this base. Take this position first. Our opponent's trying to do some counter harassment. You want to transition into dropships at some point though. Whether you open rates or not. We can take this position here. So this is very standard Eclipse. This position here basically cuts off these two bases. And now we can just... So the other thing I want to bring your attention to, I guess, is that in TVT, you take positions with your standing army, and then your reinforcements go and take new positions. So you never really want to move to your units too much. You want to commit to a certain position, and then use your recently produced units to reinforce or take another position, right? So I took this position. Instead of attacking this base with these units, I'm attacking it with the units that are being made from my factories, okay? And then if you have extra APM, just make turrets everywhere. Now we can also take these bases as well. These rates aren't really doing shit. Our opponent's like mega fucked. Now we definitely have a weakness here. We have a weakness here. You know, this is, it kind of, let's say, you could call it the comeback mechanic of TVT. Is if you overextend on the map, obviously there's going to be some location that you're not covering perfectly. And if your opponent can find that out, then, you know, they can have a way back into the game. But I mean, we have so many bases, we can afford to lose some ground here, you know? If we will at all. And we come here and finish off the game. Eclipse TVT is kind of cancer. Well, it's also very, I actually covered this the other day on my stream. I talked about this, but so there's this in TVT. Well, in any map, okay. Koreans refer to this concept of the map line. Okay, they call it like the line, and really what they mean by it is like the optimal expansion pattern. Is what I would say. Like the way to progress on the map. There's like an optimal way of doing it. Optimal bases to take. And in TVT, it's, you know, once you play a map repeatedly enough, you start figuring out the best way of playing it. And this is true for especially these maps like Polypoid, Eclipse, that people have played like a shit ton. On Eclipse is very straightforward, okay? So yeah, basically this map you have 3 lanes. You have this lane here, the high ground. You have this middle of the map lane, and then you have this lane at the top. And these are the major pathways, and you can kind of consider this back way as well in certain fringe situations, but generally these high grounds kind of control this as well, right? I'm sure you guys can see that. Not always, not perfectly always, but for the most part, to the extent that I would say it's not a major consideration. So in TVT, specifically on this map, you basically the way to play is to just kind of secure this, right? So you take your expansion, then you secure this, then you take this expansion, then you secure, by securing. So secure this, take this expansion, securing this at the same time, then take this expansion, securing this. Okay, and then the other layer of that with respect to this is if one player is playing more aggressively than the other, then kind of a neutral position would be to securing this. Like each player secures their own high ground. Though I would say this kind of generally doesn't happen too much because, to be honest, committing units here too early is kind of scary because if you take this fast third base and you commit too many units here, suddenly your opponent is attacking this on this path. It's hard to reinforce, like kind of reposition units from here to kind of stop a bust. Whereas if you kind of only commit to this portion, sure, you're giving up your high ground potentially to your opponent, but it's easier to defend the space. So generally, if there's a game where one player kind of aggressively takes the opponent's high ground, generally they have a slower third base, okay? But the progression is very standard than this on this map. Every strong player can do it, right? But it takes a lot of playing the game to figure it out. A lot of practice games to figure it out. I'll need to hold my first army on a choke and use reinforcements to attack a base. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, that's basically all I did this game. That's why for me, like, the decision making is so obvious for me, is because I know, like, I've played this map so much that I know the optimal pattern, right? The standard pattern of like expanding. And you can see our opponent's actually quite good at this level, not really missing too many SCVs, producing, taking third bases on time. Now, our opponent's a bit, for sure, weak. I mean, look at this tank production, for example. These vultures are kind of doing nothing. But overall, it's like kind of mechanically looking pretty decent, in my opinion. Although we're kind of falling. But this kind of mechanical scaling goes even into A rank. Like, even in A rank, you can kind of out-muscle players. I mean, mechanics scale into, like, pro gamer level, basically, so. But strategically, my opponent kind of knows what they're doing. Like, they're taking the base, making tanks now, 6th factory, has upgrades already. So it's really not too bad. Should have a starport first, but this third base was nicely timed. Worker count is pretty decent. Yeah. All right. That's it for today. For this F to S shit. I'm gonna cut it here. I'm gonna play some ladder games in a bit, but yeah, I'm gonna cut the... I'm tired of talking. I think I'm gonna have to start tanking some games because we're just fucking getting 40 points. I hope this helped you guys. Okay, alerts are back on forehead in case, you know, any of you guys wanted to sub. I'll be right back.
It's Flash.
Is it Flash, dude? Or is it I Love Cock?
It's Flash.
Is it Flash, dude? Or is it I Love Cock?
It's Flash.
Is it Flash, dude? Or is it I Love Cock? G4Y, what the fuck, dude? Tier fucking 3, bro? Oh my god, man. You got. Oh, Leon Carcinoma. Dude, G4Y, fucking tier 3, bro? Leon69, Carcinoma, thanks, guys. So Smurf, dude, get the fuck out of my fucking chat, retard. No, no, yeah. Thanks for watching, dude. That's, you know, that's what it is. What it is, guys. I gotta relog, unless I start my VSL account. Five BSL accounts. Wait, Carson sub is for 6 months? Where does it say that, dude? Tier 1 for 6 months in advance, dude? Holy fuck, you're a god, man. Thank you, dude. How many games do you have to play in this fucking thing? Minimum 50 games? For a round of 16? I'm gonna try and get a round of 16 off the fucking ladder, dude. 20 days. Sign up. Okay, let's do it then, Kappa. Even though, you know, I'm already, Dude, fuck yourself, man. I'm just kidding. That's almost funny, guys. Fuck you, dude. Is it saying I can't make it because it's offensive language, man? What the fuck? Dude, I just want to be BSL Uranus. What the fuck, dude? I hate when this shit bugs out, man. It's like my game is actually just taking a fucking massive shit, man. Are you serious, man? Oh no, dude. I need to make a new account. Do you understand? Fuckers. BSL 4, it doesn't matter what you fucking make it, man. BSL 14, BSL my fucking ass. Create a new account using the BSL 14 tag? Oh, fuck me, man. Shadow ban for abusing rank system? Yeah, okay, dude. Cringe. Is it actually saying that? Okay, I'm actually gonna change this for a second because I don't understand. Is it saying that it's like I can't use that word, that filthy word, Uranus? What do you mean I've reached my limit of my profiles? I don't have a fucking profile limit, man. I'm an absolute fucking god, dude. Bad word. What's a fucking bad word, man? It's... We'll use another planet's name, man. Error now, dude. Ha lol. Why is Uranus a bad word, man? I can make BSL 14 retard, but not Uranus? So triggered, man. I'm getting gate kept, dude. Dude. Yo, Microsoft censorship is off the rails already. I can't even play this game anymore, man. Authenticating what? Why is it so fucking shit right now, dude? Download failed my ass. There you go. Okay, let's see. What's the map pool? We got Eclipse Ascension, Fuck Fighting Spirit, Revolver's in there, Largo. Okay, it should be fine like this. Sick. We get to do more F to S basically. But now I don't give a shit about trying my absolute hardest to fuck this fucking C ranker or D ranker in the ass. No fucking mercy, dude. We're gonna fucking mineral boost and everything as well. This guy's gonna get fucking absolutely railed. Leg, Shibal. I'm not even... This guy is lagging though. Piece of shit.
서플라이 디포가 부족합니다.